That morning in Los Angeles was colder than usual. It wasn't the weather, it was the thick, heavy air inside courtroom 103, the bright white lights, the rustle of papers, the strained breathing of over 200 people packed into a room that felt both vast and suffocating. Robert Shapiro walked through the rows of chairs, his steps slow but steady. His crisp gray suit couldn't hide his fatigue. Nearly a year and a half of legal battles had drained him. But today it would all end. Or so he told himself. O.J. Simpson sat nearby, hands clasped, staring straight ahead. No one knew what was going on inside his head. Not even Shapiro, who once believed he knew his client better than anyone. But O.J. always had this elusive quality, like a story being told on 3 different levels at once. Shapiro took a deep breath. "Don't say anything when the verdict is read," he whispered. O.J. nodded, but his eyes held an unreadable emotion. When the jury entered, the entire room froze. No one moved. No one breathed. A reporter in the back row unconsciously clenched his pen so tightly that it snapped. Shapiro glanced at O.J. "Get ready," he whispered again. Judge Ito looked at the clipboard in his hand. The jury rose. The forewoman, a small woman, held a thin piece of paper. Her voice rang out, unwavering and clear. "We find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty." The courtroom exploded. Screams, weeping, chairs clattering. Some people covered their faces, others cried out in shock, and some yelled in protest. It was a tidal wave of emotion crashing through the room. But in the middle of that storm, O.J. was still. He didn't cry. He didn't laugh. He didn't speak. He just looked down at his own hands, as if he didn't understand what had just happened. Shapiro touched him lightly on the shoulder. "Congratulations," but O.J. remained silent. A moment later, O.J. turned. His face seemed to shift, a little relief, a little confusion, and something else, something Shapiro would only admit 2 years later: fear. O.J. leaned in close to Shapiro's ear, and then he whispered a single sentence, but it sent a shiver down Shapiro's spine. Even as he left the courtroom, Shapiro didn't dare repeat it. He was afraid. He wasn't sure of what. Afraid of the truth, or afraid of what that truth implied. Reporters swarmed him like bees. "Mr. Shapiro, how do you feel about the acquittal? Are you confident in the jury's decision? Is there anything you want to share?" Shapiro's only reply was short, measured, and familiar. "I believe in the legal system." But inside, a heavy stone had settled in his gut. For weeks afterward, Shapiro vanished from the media. He refused all interviews, skipped celebratory parties, and even declined private meetings with colleagues. He wrote a letter resigning from the legal team, leaving the stage to those who craved the spotlight. At home, he sat alone in his office. The walls were covered with diplomas, awards, and photos with famous clients. But every time he closed his eyes, he heard only one thing: O.J.'s whisper. Right after the verdict, it echoed over and over, like a voice in an empty room. Time passed. 2 tumultuous decades went by. O.J. found more trouble. The public debate never ended, and Robert Shapiro, who had long avoided the media, finally agreed to write a memoir, not to rehash the past, but to release the burden he'd carried for more than 20 years. During an in-depth interview with a national news channel, the host finally asked the question, "Mr. Shapiro, there's one thing the entire country has wondered about. What did O.J. Simpson say to you that day, right after the verdict was read? There have been so many rumors, but never an official answer." Shapiro looked down at his hands, the hands that had defended one of the most famous cases of the century. Now, they trembled slightly. He looked up, straight into the camera. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "it's time for me to speak." The air in the studio seemed to freeze. Shapiro took a deep breath. The host leaned forward, straining to hear. Shapiro continued. "That day, as people around him were exploding with emotion, O.J. turned to me. His face didn't look like someone who had just been set free. It looked like someone who had fallen even deeper." He paused. Then he whispered something that has silenced me for 2 decades. The host asked, almost in a whisper himself. "What did he say?" Shapiro looked the host straight in the eyes, then into the camera. And he spoke. "He said to me, 'Robert, how am I supposed to live now?' Not a confession, not an explanation, not an admission or a denial. Just a question, simple in its words but loaded with meaning." The studio was silent. The host looked confused, waiting for a deeper explanation. Shapiro continued. "The way O.J. asked that question, it didn't sound like someone who was happy. It sounded like someone who realized that life after the verdict would never be the same." He paused, then added, "And I understood that. Because even though the jury found him not guilty, America had torn itself apart over this case. Whether he wanted it or not, O.J. knew that from that day on, every step he took would be watched by millions of eyes, and nobody really believed in anything anymore. Shapiro sighed. I think O.J. understood that he had just entered a new life where every look was skeptical, every story had a hidden meaning, and his every action would be interpreted in the worst possible way. The host asked softly, "Do you think that question had any other implications?" Shapiro closed his eyes. "I don't know, and maybe I don't want to know." As soon as the interview aired, social media exploded. Some said, "It's just a way to dodge the question. He's still not telling the truth." Others thought, "That statement sounds scarier than any confession." And some commented, "Maybe O.J. understood that even if he was acquitted, he'd still be judged by the whole world." Analysis and commentary shows ran all night. Major newspapers immediately published red headlines. Popular crime podcasts dissected Shapiro's words. But no one, not even the most seasoned experts, could decipher the quote with any certainty. And perhaps that was exactly what Shapiro intended. In a private conversation with a former student, a young lawyer just starting his career, Shapiro was asked, "Sir, why did you reveal that quote? Was it really so important that you kept it for 20 years? Shapiro smiled, an old but sharp smile. "You're young, so you don't understand. In a shocking case like this, the truth is never simple. Sometimes it's not what's said that's important, it's what's not said." The student looked bewildered. Shapiro sipped his tea and said, "Think about it. A person who has just been acquitted, a verdict that should make them break down, cry, hug their lawyer. But O.J. didn't do that. He just asked, 'How do I live now?' It's not about guilt or innocence. It's the question of someone who has just realized that while the legal system can forgive, society doesn't." Shapiro put down his teacup. It's the question of someone who knows that from that moment on, he will live in an invisible prison, the prison of public opinion. And that prison is sometimes even more cruel. The student was silent for a long time. The story of that whisper spread far and wide. Some believed it. Some were skeptical. Some thought Shapiro was hiding something deeper. But in the end, only two people truly knew what that statement meant in that historic moment: O.J. Simpson and Robert Shapiro. One asked why his life had suddenly become so strange. The other held onto that question for 2 decades because he knew it was scarier than any confession. And the irony is, even though the statement was revealed to the world, its true meaning remains shrouded in darkness, just like the case itself, a deep wound in American history that, despite the passing of years, has never truly healed. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that make you think.